Hello everyone, my name is Brittany Baldrica, and today I'm going to be talking about climate change effects on marine mammals. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about climate change and the marine ecosystem. So overall, climate change is affecting generally the change in ocean temperature, which causes sea level rise. So as you can imagine, as the ice is melting, it's causing sea level rise. Here in Florida, we're definitely concerned about stuff like that. Number two, we have sea ice extent, so obviously the amount of sea ice that is present. And then as the sea ice is melting, it's affecting the salinity and the acidification of the oceans. And then the last one, it alters life cycle in prey species. So changes in the seasonal timing of plankton production has repercussions on the life cycle of fish predators. So this in turn affects top predators such as marine mammals. And then figure 1 is a model simulated global temperature anomaly. So it shows 21,000 years ago, 6,000 years ago, and then it's projecting what the Earth will look like in 2071. Now we're going to talk about climate change and marine mammals. So it affects marine mammals in many different ways. One of those is the altering of distributions. So species range shifts, and it's most likely to occur indirectly through the influences of their prey. Species abundance and richness. It's predicted that with the distribution changes, there's also going to be abundance changes. Which figure 2 shows predicted patterns of marine mammal species richness. So in A, this shows all species of odontocetes or toothed whales, mysticetes, which are baleen whales, and pinnipeds, so seals and sea lions. And then B shows just odontocetes, so just toothed whales. C is mysticetes, and then D is pinnipeds. So it's showing the effect of climate change and how the number of species throughout the oceans are going to change. It can affect reproductive success, increased stress overall, and then due to increased stress there can be development of new pathogens and then increased spread of existing pathogens. And one study showed that it's predicted that with climate change, brucella, which is an zoonotic disease that marine mammals can carry, will spread into new environments and infect new species. One case study is the ringed seal. So in 2006, sea ice in Svalbard, Norway, unexpectedly collapsed due to increased temperatures. Something called the West Spitsbergen Current, which normally transports warm water to Svalbard, but in 2006 they had higher water temperatures than they had seen before. So 20 years ago, ring seals spent about half of their time along these glacial fronts, and their prey consisted of polar cod in the summer and in the autumn. Now, after this unexpected collapse, ring seals spend more time near these glacial fronts as refuges, and it's decreasing their home range, and they've also seen foraging efforts increased. So what does all of this mean? So shift towards declining Arctic refuges. So these animals are spending more time near glacial fronts, which are inevitably decreasing. So they're going to be losing habitat. And then dependence of prey that are also in decline. All of this basically means that there's limited adaptability and resilience to climate change in the ringed seal. Our second case study is on the North Pacific right whale. A study was conducted to assess the vulnerability of marine mammals in general to future global warming using a trait-based approach. Combining the sensitivity and exposure indices, so how sensitive animals are, and the different types of anthropogenic threats that marine mammals are exposed to, it allowed researchers to assess the vulnerability of marine mammals to global warming. And it was found that North Pacific right whales were one of the most vulnerable species to climate change. They had a high sensitivity due to their intrinsic biological and ecological characteristics. So some ethical ramifications and considerations. So marine mammals are a keystone species, and they serve ecological roles. So they are consumers at the trophic level, and they're also super important for nutrient cycling. It also, climate change also negatively impacts marine mammals because they're long-lived species and they have long maturation rates. So they live a long time, but they don't reproduce very often. And it's been noted, obviously, that high-latitude marine environments are changing most rapidly due to climate change. And ice-dependent species are more vulnerable to declines in the sea ice. And then, sort of not really related to marine mammals, increased sea surface temperature is increasing phytoplankton blooms, which alters the food chain, and it reduces the amount of energy into the ecosystem. Figure 3 is a global distribution of cumulative environmental impacts. So it shows the impacts based on several different variables. So 0 being no change and 1 being the maximum change. So you can see that the higher latitude marine environments are seeing more of a change due to environmental impacts. So there aren't necessarily existing policies related to climate change, but there are federal, state, and provincial governments that are responsible for the conservation of marine mammals and their habitats in general. So one is the Marine Mammal Protection Act, and the other one is the Endangered Species Act. Both of them are supposed to minimize threats to marine mammals and assess climate change and its impact on the ecology and health of marine mammal populations in general. Something else to consider is that fisheries management also considers marine mammal health and population and distribution, because based on changes of their distribution, abundance, and predator-prey relationships, it can affect the fisheries. So effectiveness of these various acts of the Marine Mammal Protection Act and Endangered Species Act, they have a broad authority to obviously reduce anthropogenic threats. There's so many of them, and it's very challenging to target all of them. And they don't necessarily have the ability to regulate or reduce greenhouse gas emissions. There's constraints on the ability to react with protective measures to climate change in marine mammals, which include limited resources, regulatory inertia, and lack of public agreement. And then existing threat reduction measures and marine protected areas are great. However, they're established based on the existing occurrence of marine mammals in certain areas. And these existing protected areas may become obsolete as marine mammal distributions shift due to climate change. In Figure 4, we can see some global hotspots of marine mammals species extinction risk overlaid with these marine protected areas. So in D, you can see the black outlined areas are hotspots, and it's overlaid with the green, where those are the marine protected areas. And then A, B, and C show the different species and their ranges based on other anthropogenic threats. So we learned about the 3 E's. And as far as climate change and marine mammals go, I think the 3 E's are best suited. So we have environment. We have an obligation to the marine environment to reverse or reduce harmful effects of climate change. For economics, marine mammals are consumers of important fisheries, and changes in their distributions may concern fisheries management. And then for equity, globally, work can be done to increase the rate of climate change, and sharing data and collaboration should occur. So some adjustments to either the Marine Mammal Protection Act or just any protection for marine mammals in general. So for the environment, Species that need high management should be those that are depleted or decreasing, declines in population abundance, those that are exposed to multiple anthropogenic threats, those that inhabit high altitudes or regions undergoing rapid changes. And then for economics, we need to adapt fisheries management to support marine mammal protection. And for equity, we could involve scientists and researchers globally, and then engage in long-term planning to prepare scientists and managers with resources needed to improve data. And then we all have an obligation to protect the oceans, especially when it comes to climate change, which is heavily induced by humans. These are my references, and I look forward to your questions.